This is the latest edition of Front Up, and I'm Whitey Willauer, and I've got a great guest today, Peter Swensen. You're the Executive Director of Family and Children's Services, and I think used to be called Nantucket Behavioral Health Services.
It's been called a lot of things.
Okay.
The Family and Children's Services of Nantucket. That's our incorporated name, and that's what the organization is.
Now, what kind of services do you provide the island?
We provide the whole range of behavioral health services, so mental health services, addiction services, medication services for people that are struggling with chronic and persistent mental illness, depression or anxiety disorders, things like that. So we have psychiatrists on staff, we have clinicians, counselors, therapists on staff, we have licensed addictions counselors, and so we do the whole gamut.
Do you work with various organizations in town here?
Well, because of the clientele that we work with, we come in contact with a lot of different places in town. We, obviously we work a lot with the hospital and people that are that run into trouble and end up at the hospital. We have good working relationship with the police department and people that end up in trouble there. And we also work with a lot of the other nonprofits in town that have clients when they're working with them. They find out that maybe they could use some help in sorting things out and working through things. So we have a lot of referrals that we get and referrals that we make back to other people.
And the school?
And we have a very strong working relationship with the school where we provide services in all levels of the school, whether it's social service or social service and counseling and things like that, but also with prevention for suicide and alcohol and other drugs. And then we are the organization that funds and runs the student assistance program. We received a 3-year grant for that, which ends this year. We've been working very hard. I think that we found a solution. It won't be the same exact student assistance program, but I think we've pieced together something that looks like it'll keep the student assistance program in some capacity on island, but most importantly that we'll be able to keep Tim Cummings on island, and he's the guy that's been running it for a long time.
And that, isn't he resident in the high school?
Yeah, he has a main office in the high school, and what we're looking at is it's a collaborative relationship that we're putting together to try and keep that program running with the Alliance for Substance Abuse Prevention, ourselves, the school, the town actually is trying to help us out in coordinating it and making sure that we get everybody all together. And so Tim's responsibilities will change a little bit. He'll be doing some work out of the teen center and helping out there because he loves being there and he's great with the kids there. And he'll also be doing some of his traditional student assistance work in the school system with the middle and the high school. And we knew it was a 3-year grant when we got it, and we've been spending, I've been spending a lot of time in the last year trying to figure out a way to keep it funded because that grant ran out, and it just takes a lot of people to work together. And ASAP and the school and the town have really come together to find a solution to the problem, and I think we're pretty close. We still need some financial support for it, but I think we're pretty close to getting there.
Now, you mentioned the Teen Center. Tell me a little bit about the Teen Center.
Well, we support the Teen Center by providing some help and some assistance to the Alliance for Substance Abuse Prevention. ASAP is the organization that runs the Teen Center and oversees that. And we provide some staff support through donation of staff occasionally there. Actually, we have coming up in, I think the week right after school break, we're going to do some training for their staff to help keep them sort of on cutting edge of what they need to know and things like that. But it's a great program. When we started working with ASAP, we identified how we really wanted to work with that. And what people don't know about alcohol and drug prevention and other prevention activities is that the greatest time of risk for kids, middle school through high school, the greatest time of risk for them to get involved in negative activities or bad choices or unhealthy choices is between 2 and 6 o'clock during the day.
Really?
Which is coincidentally the time the school ends and parents get home from work. And what we're finding is that I think research has showed that there's a lot of single parents out there who are working. There are a lot of families now, most families that I know now, both parents are working. So the kids get out of school and they don't have any kind of supervision, and that's when kids start to get into a little bit more trouble. And so we've really targeted that time frame between 2 and 6 to make sure that we've got programming going on there and that we have people in there working with that age group of kids, because that's where research has pointed to one of the biggest problems that we have. We've also started doing some stuff on Friday evenings with movie nights or just sort of drop-in hangout nights and things like that. And we have a great collaborative relationship with Strong Wings, where they come in and do a thing called Friday Adventures, where kids come into the teen center and they get to go out with one of the Strong Wings staff and do stuff all over the island. So I think that ASAP is really excited about that and seeing that be as successful as it is. And our role with ASAP is really to support them and to help them make sure that that's successful.
Now, growing up, they didn't have people such as yourself, and I remember there was sort of a resistance on the island to having people that were social workers or psychiatrists coming into the school or even being around. I think things have changed. Have you sensed that it's become much more of a professional approach toward these kinds of problems?
Well, I think that one of the things that's happened over time is that the field of mental health and addictions work has gotten much more professional itself, and the training is much more advanced than it had been in the past, and it's more diversified. Mm-hmm. And there's a broader way of looking at how we do work. Mm-hmm. And for instance, you can come in and do counseling and individual one-on-one therapy or something like that in our office if that's what you choose to do. But we also have home-based programs where we'll meet with people at their home. We have the capacity to be able to meet with people at the school. If somebody felt more comfortable meeting at their church, we could, meet them there and work with them at their church. So that's a big change in how services have been, how the field has grown to provide services, is not to say to people, oh, you have to come to us. Mm-hmm. But rather to say to people, well, we'll work with you to find a way that works for you, mm-hmm. and to be able to meet you sort of where it is that you're going to be most comfortable. Because it doesn't make sense to really try and help somebody, let's say, with an anxiety disorder if they're really anxious by coming in to see you at your office.
Or be seen coming in.
That doesn't really help. You want to be able to work with people where they're comfortable and to do things that try and ease whatever the problems are that they're having. So I think that that's been part of a change for people. And I also think that as people as we've gone along, people have become more aware that most problems like addictions and depressions or anxiety or mental health is treatable. And people don't have to live with it in a way that impairs their life. They can come in and see somebody, get some help for it, and really find their life much more successful, mm-hmm. and be happier with it than to just kind of let it go and ignore it, which I think had happened in the past for some people.
Yeah, I noticed in the latest census that the Spanish-speaking population has grown on the island. How do you handle the people that don't speak English but speak Spanish or any other language?
Well, right now we're very lucky, as we have an intern who we're hoping to find a way to keep on staff when she graduates with her degree, who is bilingual. And is able to work with people who don't speak English but speak Spanish as their primary language. We also have a couple of translators that work with us and do a fantastic job with us. For instance, we have a contract with the state to do drug awareness education for people who get arrested for driving while intoxicated. Mm-hmm. And sometimes everybody in the community is susceptible to that if they drink. And if they drive, certainly they can be caught for that. They have to go and take the class. Well, we have one class that's dedicated just for people who speak Spanish, mm-hmm. And that translator comes in and works with one of our clinicians to make sure that all of the educational components that are necessary are there and provided there. So we have been very, very fortunate, I think, in being able to provide some of those services in a way that's language specific for people, and mm-hmm. that's really important.
Do you find there's a difference between how you would treat people that have a Spanish background and some that would have an English background? Is there any differentiation?
Well, I think, in any culture that you look at, you have to look at what some of the predominant ways of relating to each other and relating to the community around them are, and you have to look at what's culturally accepted in different backgrounds and in different cultures. For instance, you may want to do more family work with one particular culture than you might do with another culture. You might want to be more, you need to be a little bit more sensitive around certain areas and certain issues and things like that. I think from my background in addictions work, traditional addictions work came out of working with middle-aged white men. And so there was a lot of talk around humility and acceptance of being powerless and things like that. Well, when you're dealing with people who who are perhaps here illegal, who are struggling to integrate with our community, it's a different way of looking at that. They've got some experience with being powerless and not being and feeling like they don't have authority and power. So you approach addictions work a little bit differently. It doesn't make anybody better or any worse. It's just that you have to be aware of who it is that you're working with and how they're interacting with the community and how they're relating to the community. Because we're all different people with different backgrounds and different experiences.
Now, you came from what, New Hampshire?
I came from New Hampshire, yeah.
How long ago was that?
2006.
2006.
It was February 4th, actually.
February 4th. Very good.
Came right in the middle of the winter, so I fully prepared for the winter.
But your wife's family lives.
Yeah, my wife grew up on the island, and her family's here, and so we had some experience and knowledge of what Nantucket is like.
Yeah.
I prefer, when I'm hiring somebody from off island, I prefer to interview them in the summer and hire them in the summer so that they they think this is the way it's going to be all the time.
Yeah, and then in the winter they disappear.
And then, in the winter we just kind of say, oh, you'll be all right. Yeah.
So now tell me, when you came here and now you've been here for a while, what are the differences between, let's say, Nantucket and what you experienced in New Hampshire? Is there anything that you would notice that was particularly different?
Well, Nantucket's a very, very small community, and there are a lot of small communities around the country and stuff like that. And in New Hampshire, there are a lot of small communities. And the work that I did, I spent a lot of time up in northern New Hampshire doing stuff where you get beyond the White Mountains and you're somewhat separated from the rest of the state. And you get little tiny communities up there as well. But the difference that Nantucket has, which is very specific, is the geographic isolation of the island itself. And I think I don't think that people are quite prepared for that aspect of a small community. I know that that's something that oftentimes the state forgets when they do planning for how things are going to be done and how things should be worked out regionally. It's very, very different to be 30 miles away from another town and have a road connecting you to that than it is to be on an island that's 30 miles out to sea.
Mm-hmm.
And you got two choices of how you're going to go there, and if the weather's really not right, you're not going there. And I think that's a huge difference, and it's something that factors into all of our planning and thinking about how we respond to crises and how we respond to problems on the island, is that sense of that there can be some real isolation. And if you have really bad weather and you need to get somebody off island to a psychiatric hospital and they can't, you have to deal with that, the consequences of that. And that's not something that you experience in any small town really on the mainland, because you can always drive. Where in Nantucket you can't really do that. So I think that sense of smallness and the geographic boundaries that are so extreme make a huge difference in how you relate to problems and dealing with issues and problems on Nantucket. You can't just take what works somewhere else and apply it here and think that that's going to be the perfect solution. You can use some of those ideas and mold them and work with them to fit on Nantucket, but it's not a cookie cutter approach that you can just make it work that way. The other thing I think that is hugely different on Nantucket than in a lot of communities is the seasonal aspect of things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the seasonal change in Nantucket. Obviously the summer is gorgeous, but it's also the numbers of people that are here and how that impacts a lot of people on the island, and that can be very difficult for people. I was trying to explain that to people from the state the other day. We had some people over from the state that were visiting, and they were talking about how nice it is to drive around and not have traffic and things like that. And to talk to them about, well, you got to come and see the island at all seasons, but particularly the difference between winter and summer, because there are some traffic issues in the summer. They're not terrible as compared to other communities, but it's very, very different. And it's a different population of people that are here, and I think that provides some challenges and some unique aspects to it itself, all its own.
Now, one or two more questions. What's the biggest problem on the island as far as addictions are concerned?
Well, it's just like with any other community. The biggest problem on Nantucket, as with any other community in the country, is alcohol.
Yeah.
Alcohol is the number one problem that we have. If as a society we could get a handle on how we relate to alcohol and how we deal with alcohol, we would be much better off. As a whole, it just is the number one public health problem in the country. That's, it's not only my opinion, but a lot of people really believe that. A lot of research indicates that alcohol is tied into a whole number of different problems that it only exacerbates and makes worse. So, I mean, for us as a community, that's a huge problem. And I think we see it played out all over the place. I mean, it's much more fun to talk about cocaine or heroin and say those are the real problems, but they pale in comparison to the costs associated to alcohol within any community.
Yeah. And then, just out of curiosity, we got a big influx of people in the summer. Does that increase your business in the summer? And in other words, you have much more patients in the summer, or are they all receiving help off Island?
Well, if we get a parking garage, that'll take care of all the problems. But just kidding.
I told you not to talk about that.
I won't talk about the parking garage. No.
Mosquitoes?
Mosquitoes too. We can deal with them. Parking garage mosquitoes, and then if we could fix the boulevard, that would be helpful too. But just kidding. The summer, what's interesting about the summer is that a lot of people in the summer, you end up on the beach and it's beautiful and it's great, and then you think, well, I got to stop and go and see my therapist. So we have a lot of people that have an appointment and they don't show up because where they are is actually working for them at the moment. But we do get the challenge that we have, which is very different than any other community I've ever worked in, is we get a lot of people that come here to work for the summer, and they think that because they're going to be on Nantucket and it is gorgeous here in the summer and it's a lot of fun to be here in the summer, that they might not need to bring their medication with them. So they might have problems with anxiety, or they might have problems with depression or something like that, and they decide that they're going to be on Nantucket and they're going to try and see if that works. Well, for some people it does. For other people where there really is a real significant mental illness, after about 3 to 6 weeks that pops up and then they need help. So we do end up seeing, about the middle of July, we start to see a few more people that we wouldn't normally see, who are here for the summer, and we work with them to try and get them back onto the medication that they need to be on, that they didn't, that perhaps they didn't bring with them, or they forgot it at home or wherever.
Yeah.
So that, that's a unique aspect of, when I was working in Nashua or in Concord, New Hampshire, we just didn't have that kind of an experience very often.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't recall that kind of thing ever happening
Yeah.
there, but it happens here periodically from time to time, particularly in the summer months.
Yeah. Well, I gather I'm seeing the flag that we've used up all of our time. So anyway, have you got anything you need to add that I haven't included?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered it.
Have you started to fish yet?
No, but that's my summer activity, and it should be in just a few more weeks. I'm hoping the bass are going to make an early arrival this year.
I see.
And make things a little more tolerable.
Well, Peter, thank you very much.
Great, Whitey.
And it's great to have you on board.
Good to be here.
And we hope to get you back in the not too distant future.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.